picture of a 15-year-old Syrian refugee. He came to Europe last year, crossing the Mediterranean from Turkey to Greece. In this picture by UNICEF, he's on the border with Macedonia, September last year. In his hand, he's holding one of the most valuable possessions he has, his phone. Using WhatsApp, Viber, Facebook, he's in touch with his father, who's in Germany, where he's hoping to go, as well as his mother and siblings who are back in Jordan. My talk today is going to be about the potential that this picture illustrates. It's going to be about humanitarian innovation and technology and connectivity, and how it can and should change the future of humanitarian action. Let me take a big step back. This is a map of the world by National Geographic showing population density and income inequality. Blue is high income, red and yellow is low. It's also a picture of a world in imbalance and change. Three major trends are population growth. In a few decades, we've doubled on this planet. It's an increase in inequality. The gap between the richest and the poorest is widening. And a trend of increased mobility. Alex Betts from the Refugee Study Center estimates that in the 1970s, there were 70 million migrants in the world. Today, there are 200 million people on the move. There are several drivers for this increased mobility, but I'm going to focus on the most dramatic one. People being forced to flee due to war and conflict. Today, there are 60 million people who have been forced to flee their home and everything they know in order to seek a safe and better future. That is the highest number since any time since the Second World War. As this graph shows, it's been a steep increase the last couple of years, and that's mainly due to one conflict, Syria. 3 days from now, it's going to be 5 years since the Syrian conflict started. Since then, on average, every single hour, 50 Syrian families have been forced to flee their homes. That's 50 families every day since the spring of 2011. Every child inside Syria who's 5-year-old or less has only experienced war and conflict in his or her life. And this is how war is being fought. By laying siege to civilian areas, cutting off water, food, electricity, in order to pressure them and reach military and political opportunities. Just look at this picture for a moment. It's a picture of Yarmouk, a suburb of Damascus where I actually studied Arabic in the summer of 2007. I remember a neighborhood of life and laughter and the smell of fresh falafels when I left my Arabic teacher's house. Now it's a place of death, desolation, but also persistence and perseverance. But a crucial aspect to understand about the Syrian war is that the human suffering is not a consequence, a side effect of the war. It's a will consequence of the war. Human suffering is used as a strategy, as a military tool in order to reach objectives of power. This is the reason for why Syria has become my and yours generation's worst humanitarian crisis. I'm going to show you some numbers on the scale of that crisis, but I ask you all to try to remember that behind these numbers are people, individuals, like me and you. First of all, there's 6.5 million internally displaced Syrians. People who've been forced to flee but are inside the country still. In addition, there are 7 million others who are suffering and in need. On top of them, the ones we hear most about, there are 4.5 million refugees who have fled outside Syria to seek international protection and safety, mostly in the neighboring countries. In total, today as I stand here, there are 18 million people in Syria who are in need. In the world, that number is 125 million people. Some of these people are not getting any assistance, are not getting protection. We need to change this. We need to improve this. We need to work harder, smarter, and better in order to reach more people with better aid. My talk is about humanitarian innovation, and this is the 125 million arguments why we need to improve. I'm going to talk about the opportunities, but let me just take one clarification. Humanitarian assistance is a band-aid. It will not solve the causes of human suffering. The people of Syria, they need political solutions. They need the men with guns to stop shooting, and the states giving them the guns to stop giving them fuel to the fire and start putting pressure to talks. A refugee does not only need a roof over his head or food on the table. They need rights as individuals. They need access to work. The children need to be able to have an education. People need to be able to move. Back to the opportunities. I'm going to talk about two opportunities. And the first one is about how we give assistance. This is how most aid is delivered today. By an outside agency like mine, transporting and delivering physical assistance to people in need, often based on assessment done by the agencies themselves. This is saving many lives, but there are also some challenges. One challenge is illustrated by a survey done last year in the Middle East. People in need were asked, is the UN and NGOs meeting your priority needs? On a scale from 1 to 10, they gave us a rate of 3. We are not meeting their priority needs. One way of changing this, very directly and concretely, is what I believe is the future of aid. There we go. That's right. Okay. Giving people aid directly. For example, in the form of giving digital cash on the mobile phone using SMS services. Giving people cash directly is more effective in terms of cutting out the need of expensive logistics. It reduces the need of expensive middlemen like my organization. It is efficient in terms of improving the local market. Instead of deflating it with bringing in goods, you insert value to the local markets. IRC did a study in Lebanon that showed that for every $1 of cash given directly to people in need, an approximate $2 of worth of value was created in the local market. But most importantly, as I said, it empowers the person in need to decide herself what she wants to spend that aid on. So instead of having to sell a big sack of rice which has been transported from the US in a deflated market, he or she can go to the market and buy what she needs to fix the hole in her roof, to buy medicine to her grandmother, or school books to the children. Cash is no silver bullet. It won't fix everything. If there is no functioning market, cash will not solve your problem. If there is no doctors, cash will not help. But cash is one of the most studied and evaluated methods of humanitarian assistance the last decade, and the evidence is solid and overwhelmingly positive. Despite of this, approximately only 6% of all aid is given this way today. This needs to change. I think two reasons for why we're not changing is internal to our system. First of all, it's the fear of trying something new, and rather staying with what we know and what we've done before. And secondly, it's the structure of the humanitarian system, specifically hierarchical structures inside agencies and specialized agencies with mandates who are not able to work efficiently across sectors. But I really, really believe that this change is coming. And what is needed, the type of innovation which is needed, is disruptive innovation to the system. It's the system that needs to change. The second opportunity I'm going to talk about is connectivity. This is how a cell phone looked in the early 1990s. In 1996, 1% of the world population had access to internet. That number today is 50%. That access to communication and information is a major change in our world. It changes how individuals think and how societies interact. Today, approximately 2/3 of the world population have access to a mobile phone. There are 2.5 billion smartphone users in the world, a figure which is estimated to double in a few years. Since 2000, the amount of data traffic has increased 400 million times. In 2014, 15% of all financial transactions in Africa were done by a mobile phone. The same figure in the West was 5%. And people who know much more about cell phones than I do say that maybe in 5 years' time, the average Somali refugee mother will hold a more powerful phone in her hand than the US president does today. Now just imagine the potential in that. We need to grasp this opportunity and take advantage of it. But humanitarian innovation, it's living it. But humanitarian innovation is not only about technology. It's about how we work, how we think, how we cooperate. It's about continuous improvements based on learning. Put very simply, it's about doing things better. I see this embodied in my 9,000 colleagues for the Norwegian Refugee Council who work across all the major conflict zones in the world. Last year, my colleagues helped 5 million people. And it's the eagerness of improving that and helping more and better, which is the most important driver for innovation. Let me just show a quite basic project, an example of innovation. This is a picture from Dadaab, the world's largest refugee camp in northern Kenya on the border with Somalia. Here, NRC, together with partners, introduced internet-connected tablets in the classrooms, connecting students to each other, to the world, and unlimited resources of learning. But it's not necessarily that's which is the most innovative part. It's how this project came about and the partnership of it. It was a partnership based on the refugee camps, of course, and the schools there, the Norwegian Refugee Council, the UN, but also a British telephone company, Vodafone, a national Kenyan internet provider, Safaricom, and a Chinese tablet producer, Huawei, who delivered these tablets. Inspired by this project and many others, NRC has recently gone into a partnership with Norway's leading technical university, using their smart minds to come up with better solutions for tomorrow's challenges. NRC, we try to understand what does it take to make innovation succeed, and we've studied some of the commonalities in successful innovative projects. And there are some key lessons here. One of them is that the ideas came from close to where the needs were. They didn't come from Oslo, internet, or the US. It was either the refugees themselves, national staff knowing the context, or somebody else who came up with the ideas. The projects were driven by people with passion and enthusiasm. And when facing a challenge, they were able to, instead of just getting frustrated and bogged down, they were able to use that frustration and channel it into creativity and coming with new ideas. Another commonality was the leadership, the managers of these projects. They were open-minded and listening. When the idea came to them, they said, yes, let's try this. They took risks. They were willing to try, but they also were the ones to put the red line. Important balance. Did not happen in isolation. It was when we were able to work together across ourselves and bringing in partners, building networks, that innovation succeeded. I think there are important lessons here. We need, my sector, we need to be able to try and test more. And based on that, we need to learn. Not just identify lessons, but learn the lessons. We need to build a culture of continuous improvement based on learning. And this requires openness and humility. To be able to take a step back, look at what we do, how we do it, and maybe how we should do it differently. Let me end by showing you this picture of one of my inspirations. Her name is Miriam, a Syrian refugee in Lebanon. Refugees are not helpless victims. They're individuals with initiative and agency. Fleeing from all you know takes courage. It takes guts. I have immense respect for refugees, for Miriam and her mother and father. I don't know what Miriam will do in the future, but I want you to come with me on a journey and think, how can we help her better? And think 5 years ahead. How can we help her or somebody else using mobile phones? Not just by giving her cash or aid, but by empowering her and enabling her to take opportunities in her hand. I have no doubt that she will go far. Look at her eyes. But also think about this. The biological father of Steve Jobs was a Syrian migrant. Albert Einstein was a German refugee. When people are in desperate need, I believe it's our duty to reach out the hand. It's our shared humanity that demands it of us. And if we do not, I believe we become less. And there's so much potential. Maybe it's the future students of United World College who, together connected with students in Aleppo or Bangui in the Central African Republic, will come up with solutions to break the future sieges of tomorrow's wars. I really believe it's possible. But I don't believe there are any quick fixes. As long as there are powerful old men with guns and bombs who are willing to use them on their own civilian population, people they're supposed to protect, there will be human suffering. But I have much more faith in the good of people, people with drive and passion who want to do good, to do better. That's where the hope is. Thanks.